Hello, and welcome to the Wrangler's unit of the week. And today we're taking a look at the R-1 Recon Tankette. So the origins of this tank actually comes from Czechoslovakia, as it was known as a H-IV. And all things considering, it was a rather simple, basic tankette from the early 1930s, which were really one of the more common tanks that were being produced at the time. Had two machine guns, light armor, it could move around from A to B. Pretty standard stuff here. The Czechs, being the Czechs, would end up trying to sell these tanks to other countries. And they would actually sell them to Iran, Sweden, and even in Ethiopia, and of course the Romanians. It's a little bit of a hiccup between the production and factory runs of the Romanian models of the tanks, as they wanted some different specifications, but by 1938 they started receiving these tanks, and they had, from what I read, around about 30 to 40 of these tankettes. They were mainly assigned to the motorized divisions within the Romanian army, and of course they would see service during the Operation Barbarossa campaign. As you might guess, by the 1940s, these weren't exactly all that useful, and they were definitely outgunned and out-armored. They would actually see fighting during Stalingrad, but by the time the Russians encircled the Axis forces, the Romanians had to set fire to their tankettes and abandon them. Funnily enough, from what I've read, by 1945, in March, only one of these tanks was still in service. What is rather crazy, is the Ethiopian usage of this tank, because they would buy 20 of these models in 1948. They wouldn't actually enter into service and be shipped to Ethiopia by 1950. The reason being is that Ethiopia didn't have any tanks, and they're a rather poor country, and Czechs were known at that time for good, reliable vehicles, and so they decided to go with the Czechs and brought some rather cheap tankettes. They made a few modifications, such as an improved engine, better cooling systems, because of course they're going to be operating in the desert. Funnily enough, when these were first shipped over to Ethiopia, the problem was that the Ethiopians never had an armoured division before. They didn't know how to actually use a tank and how to operate it, and so they actually had Czech instructors come over to help instruct these new recruits on how to actually use these tankettes. Funnily enough, with all of that, however, these would see a pretty long service through many wars, even up until the 1980s. In-game, the R-1 is a 10-point recon tankette available exclusively to the 5th Romanian Cavalry Division, and it has two weapons. It's just two machine guns. They're both Czech machine guns, so it's not too much of a surprise. You have a decent amount of ammunition. They're both pretty similar in terms of stats. One of them is slightly better than the other, however. I don't know what to say. Down to the miscellaneous stat, it goes 39 kilometers off-road, 45 kilometers on the road, has bad stealth, and high optics capability because it's a recon unit. Okay, so, in battle, this is just another one of those weird European pre-war light tanks. It's just kind of thrown in the recon tab, because I don't even think the armies really knew what to do with it by 1944. Because, let's be honest here, this isn't exactly a fantastic tank. Even for the price, it's pretty bad. For 10 points, you get two machine guns. Not one, but two. And that's really it. I mean, you can kill infantry with machine guns, of course, because they're machine guns, but they can't kill things that aren't infantry or have armor, because machine guns can't go through armor, surprisingly. And also, you don't really have much armor of your own. It's really just the bare minimum to survive basic small arms fire. Now, usually these sorts of crappy light tanks would have a decent role of just kind of being thrown into a town or light forest and providing just a little bit of extra fire support for your infantry. But for Axis players in general, I don't really find this to work all that well, because if you're fighting against a Soviet player, they're going to have a lot of anti-tank rifles embedded in a lot of the infantry squads, and those PTRDs are just going to go straight through your armor. Against Western Front divisions, it's a bit different, because they don't have anti-tank rifles. But it's not exactly an ideal situation. Now, card rides, you do get decent availability. You only get one card of them, but you can get 8 of them unvetted, so that's not too bad. So it does seem pretty tempting, also considering the fact that you have a lot of recon slots in 5th Cavalry. But the other recon options are honestly much better, as you either get armoured cars that do actually have armor penetration weapons, or you have the fantastic infantry which have a boatload of snipers. This is really a bottom of the barrel unit, but this is the funny thing with Steel Division 2, is that you have terrible units such as this, and I cover a lot of these terrible units in these, the Reeks, because I find them interesting, not so much from the gameplay perspective, but from the historical perspective, because, like I say, with a lot of these units, I can't think of another World War II video game that includes this tankette. This isn't a thing that's really covered all that much in the literature as well, so it's pretty cool to see it represented in an actual video game in a proper way. It's not just like a mod from Men of War or Assault Squad 2. And it's the one thing I really do love about Steel Division 2 is showcasing these weirder units and other, minor nations and equipment that were used in the Second World War, because it wasn't all Shermans and Panzer IVs and Tigers and STGs. A lot of people were really scraping the bottom of the barrel. But yeah, it's crap, don't take it, but it's a cool piece of history. And well, I'm going to leave it off at that. This has been another Rang Rouge Unit of the Week. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and as usual, please just take it easy.